So not only the people who are below the poverty level, but everyone benefits from the prebate. So basically we're saying that if a person who is at the poverty level, whether it's a single person, a family of 4, whatever that poverty level is as set by the U.S. government, they're going to get 23% of that back every year in order to make sure that they pay 0 taxes because they're at or below the poverty level. Anybody who spends above the poverty level, then they're going to begin paying the fair tax. So that's what makes it a progressive tax, because it unburdens the poor. Right now, the working poor, someone who is making less than the poverty level, files their taxes and gets every single dollar back, pays 0 on their 1040. They still pay 7.65% payroll taxes as they earn their money.
Gotcha.
So that's another little secret that the people in Washington don't want to make very public, is that even the poor are paying taxes.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that people understand that the prebate affects everyone.
Right.
Now, if someone who is gracious doesn't want to get the prebate back, they don't have to file the yearly form with the federal government in order to get that prebate. Oh. So that's, it makes it a voluntary thing. And if some people in their good graces would rather allow the government to keep that money and not get it, they are certainly entitled to, just as they are today. Someone like a Warren Buffett or Bill Gates, right, they don't have to claim all those deductions every year, do they?
Yeah, those two guys probably.
But they always take advantage of that.
Yeah, right. I know that at the beginning of the show you said you became interested in this topic by reading a book on this. Was it Neil Bortz's book?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. John Linder and Neil Bortz.
Right. And of course, John Linder is getting ready to retire, so you're going to have to find another good, strong advocate up there in Washington. I know that there are a few of them up there who might be able to take that role. But I know that one of the things that Neil Bortz always talks about was the amount of research and analysis that has actually gone into this proposal in terms of figuring out that 23% is actually the proper amount and things along those lines. Right. So why don't you give a little bit of background on that?
Sure. When this whole idea came about, it was a number of business people that actually had this idea that the current system has to change. So they tasked a number of different economists from around the country, people from Harvard, from the key business schools and universities around the country, to analyze and look at what would we do? How would this all be structured and put together? They spent over $20 million in this economic analysis to come up with a proposal that is now the Fairtax. Most economists will tell you that the most efficient way of collecting revenues for a government is through some kind of a sales tax or consumption tax. Not so much from an income tax. You really don't get the same benefits from easy taxation as you do from a sales tax type system. If you look at gross national product, it continues to go up all the time. It may level things, but it's always on an upward spiral. But if you look at employment and income tax, you will see peaks and valleys. So it's not as an efficient system.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly when you're talking about something like this, I mean, you're talking about a system where these folks are already collecting sales taxes, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, and
right,
so
for the most part. There are a number of states that don't, would have to put that kind of a system in. But for the most part, businesses are used to paying those kind of taxes.
Right. So largely the infrastructure is there, which
Absolutely.
which is also an advantage. We have another slide around some of the common criticisms that we hear of the fair tax. We're going to go ahead and put this up, and we're going to take them one by one. Rate is not 23%, but instead is a higher rate. It's not enforceable. It's not revenue neutral. It's not politically viable, and it's regressive. You've hit on a few of these already, but why don't you just take it from the top there?
Sure.
The rate is not 23%.
Well, when the analysis of how to structure this new tax system was put in effect, you had to analyze the two packages on the same, so it's apples and apples. Income tax is an inclusive tax. So the fair tax was structured as an inclusive tax at 23%. Yes, if somebody wants to say that $23 out of 100, it will be 23% forever, okay? $23 out of 77 is 30%. 23 out of what's left, okay? But if you want to make that argument, Then you have to take the income tax and make that exclusive. And now you're talking about a 50% tax rate instead of where we are in the 30s. So we're trying to make things comparable. So it's the way the Fairtax works. If a vendor, retailer sells something for $100, $23 goes to the federal government. That will always be 23%.
Right.
It's built into the price, so it's sent on to them. The argument about that it's not enforceable. All taxes, people are going to try to game a system, no matter what kind of system we have. With the current system, we certainly know that they're very good at gaming the system. The Fairtax has two key components. Number one, businesses must file and get a business registration. So before that they're allowed to not pay taxes, they have to register. So that's a big incentive for people to play fair by the rules, all right? The second key thing is that currently there's about 140 million audit points for the IRS. Under the Fairtax, you're talking about 20 million audit points in the terms of businesses that are filing. So the targeted audits is a much more enforceable type of a tax than the current system.
Yeah,
so
I mean, that
point
is so ridiculous on its face that it's not enforceable, because it's not enforceable compared to what? I mean, the current myriad of laws and loopholes and things along those lines. Clearly, this would be a much more concise, much more targeted, much more direct monitoring type system.
Right.
All right.
And it's built to be revenue neutral. I mean, it was, the whole equation was, okay, how much is collected now, and how much do we have to collect in order to collect that same amount? So the whole concept is that it is revenue neutral. Now, the fact is that even in conservative ways of looking at this, in gaining income from people who are not paying now, most people tend to think that we're going to collect more than what is currently collected. And to me, one of the key benefits, as I started out, one of the reasons why I think the Fairtax is so good, is that we take the politics out of the collection side of the ledger here, all right? Now we can turn our efforts on how these folks in Washington are actually spending the money. Right now, they have us arguing among ourselves as to how we're going to pay and who's going to pay and how much that big bad corporation pays versus the little taxpayer and things like that. They have us arguing so much among ourselves that we're ignoring how they actually spend the stuff. And this will give us, first steps first. Let's fix the collection side, and then we can move on to the other side. That's not part of the Fairtax. The Fairtax only deals with how we collect.
Right. Well, obviously one of the bullet points we had up there is that it's not, quote unquote, politically viable. And what's embedded, I think, just in the comments that you made right now is that a major source of power for our elected officials on Capitol Hill is doling out special tax breaks, special tax considerations, making tax problems go away, et cetera, et cetera. In addition to the entrenched industry of tax lawyers and accountants and folks that benefit from the current system, clearly that's going to be an uphill battle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the only way that this is going to be successful is through the groundswell of grassroots efforts, and that's why people like myself volunteer and work at fairs and different venues in order to get more people to sign up the Fairtax and try to get their member of Congress to be a co-sponsor on the legislation. That's the only way this is going to work, because we're up against some very strong people in terms of 435 people on the House side and 100 in the Senate, along with the lobbyists and all the rest of the people who have a vested interest in here. As far as like the tax preparers, yes, a lot of people do the tax preparation as a cottage industry, so to speak, but most CPAs that we talk to will tell you that they would rather do what they were trained to do, was actually the books, as opposed to updating themselves and staying current every single year as to the complexities of the current income tax system.